Hey, I do welcome you to today's show. We are talking about stress management. On our journey to having an optimum health and wellness, we have determined that one of the key components is managing stress. Managing stress is so key, it is so vital, it is so important. I cannot stress this. It is very important that we know how to manage stress because, studies shows that the presence of stress is the major causes of many disease. And to achieve an optimum health and wellness, we want to have a life without the presence of disease. And so, like I always say, your life and my life is a unit, okay? No one area stands by itself. You are a unit. And so when things are going on, when you are having the presence of disease in your life, check probably your stress level. Check, and be honest with yourself. Probably you are downplaying the presence of stress in your life because you are a unit and I am a unit. And no one area of our lives is in isolation. The physical area, the emotional, mental health, spiritual, they all work together. And so to eliminate disease, we need to look at all these different areas and different components of our lives. So it is very key for me that I start the conversation when it comes to how to manage stress. Now, I would like to stress, if you are at a point where you think you need help, go for it. Because this is not in any way to replace getting professional help. My job on this show is to create the awareness. Because some people even excuse, if I should say, they excuse stress. Oh, it's because I have too many things to do. And it's not really that. It's because there is stress in your life. So for me on this show, I want to start the conversation. I want to kick the ball rolling for us to begin to create the awareness that stress is not something we just leave it. We got to take care of it. We start, sometimes with this pattern of asking yourself questions, for the most part, it does help. And if you know that I'm at a point where I need help, go get help. Talk to your professional about the stress and get help, all right? But of course, also, after you talk to your professional, they give you help, you gotta do it, okay? It depends on you. Nobody can do it for you. Your healthcare professional cannot do it for you. You can go for Christian counseling. Your pastor can give you the right counseling you need, but at the end of the day, you are the one who needs to do it. And that is why for me, it is important that I start with you for us to create the awareness and see that, do I have stress in my life? How am I working it out so that you can be able to start off with some of the self-help tips that we are sharing on this show. And if you've gotten to a place where you need help, by all means, let's do that. So let's get this conversation rolling. Remember, we were talking about asking yourself questions, and I cannot stop saying this. I believe so much in asking yourself questions. I use this in every area of my life, and it's been really helpful to me. Okay, and so we were saying that let's ask ourselves questions. Okay, because sometimes what we do when it comes to stress management, we excuse it. Oh, it's because I'm just a hyper person, or it's because I'm just this, and then we downplay it, or it's because my personality is, I have a kind of personality that I'm always agitated, whatever. we make excuses for it, whereas we actually don't have to do that. We actually need to be taking care and managing our stress. That's one area. For example, some people or somebody might say, oh, my job is stressful. Oh, my job is stressful. Oh, my family, managing my family, there's a lot of stress. Probably your job really isn't stressful. Probably you have a behavior of procrastinating. You have deadlines to meet, and then you wait until it is so close. And once it's close, now the stress is on because now you get an anxious. Oh my gosh, I haven't met up this due date that is coming up on this project, on this meeting that is coming up. And so now, because you're so close, you get an anxious, and so you're working, not you want to, but anxiety will not put you in a place where you can put in your best. So the stress comes on. So you realize that the source of it actually isn't quote unquote my job is stressful. It's because you have a behavior of procrastination. That is why it is very key that we ask ourselves questions. Why am I having this behavior? And all these investigations into yourself is going to help you, okay? It's going to help you to be able to determine the source of the stress or stresses that you and I go through, okay? This is really good. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we will continue the conversation. We'll continue creating awareness and equipping ourselves to live a life where we can manage stress effectively. See you soon. Welcome back. So we are talking about stress management, and we've said that we need to ask ourselves questions in order to figure out the sources of stress. Okay. Another thing, as you ask yourself questions, you also want to figure out, how do I cope with stress in my life? Because if you are excusing stress in your life, just brushing it off and so, oh, it's because of this, because of that, you empower the stress to keep going. All right. And stress that is not treated or that is not managed with time will encourage the presence of disease. And you know our goal. We want to have optimum health and wellness. And we cannot have stress at a high rate when we still want to have an optimum health and wellness. It is one or the other. So our goal is to manage the stress. So while you determine the sources of these stress going on in your life, in my life, we want to figure out, okay, all right, so it's not because my job is stressful. I was giving an example. Or another example, it's not because, my family, I cannot take care of my family, or my kids are this or that, or whatever, whatever it may be. Maybe more time management needs to get into the family unit. And the lack of it, you begin to say, oh, my family, all this, only if my kids were grown up. And we begin to, put the blame on where it isn't really the source. Some of these sources of stress are quite obvious to tell, like somebody who is moving, somebody who is changing jobs, somebody going through, let's say, divorce or whatever. We know that all these circumstances can create stress, all right? And our heart goes out to them, we pray for them. But for you and I, that by God's grace, we aren't going through these. All right, how do we determine the sources of stress? Sometimes it is one behavior, all right, probably procrastination, probably the lack of time management. We haven't built that behavior, okay, that discipline. And so that triggers into a source of stress in our lives, all right? Probably the evening before you go to sleep, you want to lay out some things as far as taking care of the family, and the lack of spending that little time to lay things out and make sure that in the morning this is how it's going to run. The lack of that in the morning throws everything off, and we have the habits of saying a rush hour. Yes, it gets stressful, and every morning we go through the stress, these kinds of stress, and they aren't really good for us. So what can I do to limit this morning quote unquote rush hour and all the things that I go through? It's what we're looking into. And so we said, find the sources of stress, all right? And after we find it, how are we coping with it? Okay? Because the way we cope with stress, okay, can either be helpful to us or it can be hateful to us. The way we cope with stress may be healthy or unhealthy. The way we cope with stress may solve the problem or may compound the problem. So we got to figure it out. We got to figure it out. How am I coping with stress in my life? Is it a healthy way? It is an unhealthy way. Okay, it is a productive way. Is it an unproductive way? Once we begin to figure these things out, it's gonna help us on our journey to managing stress so that we can have optimum health and wellness. We are going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll be looking into some of these coping mechanisms. See you soon. Welcome back. So on our journey of managing stress, we are at a point where we are talking about how to identify the way we cope with stress. First of all, let's look at some of the unhealthy ways. Let's look at some of the unproductive ways that we manage stress or we cope with stress, even though we shouldn't. Once we identify this, in our next segment, we will be talking about the right ways, the healthy ways that we need to take care of stress, or better still, how to cope with it so that the problem doesn't lead into, mental issues, health issues, physical problems, but we can be able to take control of it and be in control. Remember, we said for us to manage stress, we gotta be in control. So once we figure out these coping mechanisms, we can now attack the wrong ones and replace them with the right ones. So let's look at some of the ways that sometimes we cope with stress. So I believe some of the major ones include smoking. All right, smoking tobacco, people, they go under stress. Stress is not good for you. It affects your mental, your emotional health, physically, and so we all don't want it. The body doesn't want it. We don't want it. Our bodies are smart enough to not want something that is not going to be good for us, right? And so when we get under stress, we all want to relax, and so people use smoking to cope with the stress or calm it down. And that behavior is not healthy, all right? Other coping mechanism people use, sometimes prescription drugs, pills, or illegal drugs that are just not good for you, all right? People use that as a source of coping with stress, all right? So we are identifying some of the coping ways, some of the coping mechanisms that people use to manage stress that isn't healthy, all right? Once we do that, we want to look at, okay, how do I now leave these coping mechanisms that are unhealthy, that are unproductive, to the ones that are productive. All right. So one of them is the drugs we just talked about. Another also is drinking too much alcohol. I must mention that some of these coping mechanisms are what leads into addictions. All right. Okay. And they definitely repetition of these bad habits, repetition, and these addictions destroys our body. Okay, somebody who smokes, to calm down stress and cope with stress. Eventually, smoking is going to affect your lungs. You may develop lung diseases. Okay, lung cancer is not good for you. And remember, to have optimum health and wellness, we want to live without the presence of disease. And disease is simply dis-ease, the lack of easiness. So in order for you to find the right coping mechanism to take care of stress, you rather use, for example, we're talking about smoking, you use that in replacement. You know that you are a unit, all right? You may be eating well, but if you don't manage stress and you're using smoking, for example, it's a matter of time. It's going to bring the presence of disease, even though you were having a healthy diet, all right? The way you manage stress may take you back to disease. And that is what our goal is. We want to avoid it because we want to have optimum health and wellness. And on the journey of having health and wellness, we want to have a balanced and a fulfilled life, all right? Somebody who does drugs or smoking, it can affect your liver. You know how it goes. Sometimes some people cope with stress through eating, overeating. We eat for survival. Okay? We don't survive to eat. We eat to survive. We don't survive to eat. So yes, we need to eat for survival, but for somebody who is finding a way to cope with stress, might just have the habit of overeating, eating more than you should because stress comes and that the coping mechanism is food and it shouldn't be that. That's one way. Other people use things like distracting themselves. Like some people work a lot. They're always working. They always need to find something to do so they can be distracted from the stress. So you may have maybe your relationship, you have stress in it. Instead of sitting to figure out why do I have stress in my marriage? Why is my partner and I always having these issues? Somebody may use working. They become workaholic. They use it to hide the stress. They use it to cope with the stress. But you know that is not healthy. It's better to face it head on, okay, in love, of course, and say, here is our problem and we need to figure out how to take care of it, or we need to get help, instead of using some of these behaviors to distract yourself. Some people also may use behaviors that distract, like even the phone. Today people just go on their phone, flipping, all that. Sometimes social media. Sometimes people use, they sleep a lot, they procrastinate, they draw away from family and friends, okay? They pull out of social, connections, and all these are unhealthy ways that people cope with stress. So you know what? I am creating the awareness for you and I because